are rich teams and there are poor teams. Then there's 50 feet of crap. And then there's us.
That's $1, man.
What?
Welcome to Oakland.
I need more money.
We're not New York. Find players with the money that we do have.
Hello humans, welcome to the N-Word, the Manx Sports podcast brought to you by Martin, that's me.
And Matt.
That's him. Hello Matthew.
Hello.
We hit Zoom again.
Yeah.
You well?
Yeah, not too bad. I spent a day in the garden and I don't know if you can see for the people there. Got a nice, good old Manx tan.
YouTube, for those YouTubers. Proper Manx tan.
Feeling like an old man. I'll be a lobster tomorrow, I'm sure.
And when do you fancy peeling that off? Will that be Monday, Tuesday? You'll be peeling your skin off and going back to white?
That's me, my annual sun allowance.
Were you Zwifting outside then, were you?
Oh, God, don't be silly.
All right. I'm surprised you had any time to go out with Zwifting.
Oh, no, just sat in the garden.
All right. During work hours, I hope.
Oh, I had the holiday.
Oh, right, okay. All right. Try to dop you in it.
What you can call a holiday, getting in the garden now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's typical. It's dead nice and you can't go anywhere. So just a quick shout out to our sponsors, Billboards, the future of advertising, digital advertising. You'll see them around the Isle of Man. So go and see the guys, get your name out there, get your brand out there. And we all need marketing and getting our products out. So they're the guys to go and see. So I highly recommend. That's billboards.im. Go and have a look at their website, future of advertising. So we're joined by Paul. Paul, thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us on.
No worries at all. Just on the introduction there, I don't know whether, Matt, you recognise the clip, particularly from a movie.
Yeah, Moneyball.
Yeah, so I haven't seen the movie, but it'll become relevant why that clip was played. I think as we chat a bit more to Paul about his background and certainly what he's doing now, it's quite relevant. But it's a Brad Pitt movie, so obviously my stunt double's been quite busy doing that. So it's on my list to watch actually, because I think it's a baseball, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that's maybe on the weekend list to watch. So thanks for your time, Paul. So start off like we all do with all the podcasts is appreciating you're not on the Isle of Man now, but you are a Manxie. Are you a come over? Are you Manx, or Manx is the Hills?
Yeah, I'm a come over, I suppose. So moved over when I was 4. So my dad came over for work back in the 80s, and then so stayed. So initially moved to Castletown, and then after that there for a year or two. Obviously very young, then moved to Douglas, to the Big Smoke. And
where did you come from?
Oh yeah, so came from Birkenhead.
Oh right, yeah. So that's
I'm not even proper Scouse.
Yeah. You implying we're not a proper Scouse?
We're all Scouse.
Well, yeah. So then, early days or earlier days that you remember more so in the Douglas area. What schools were you around Douglas?
Yeah, so I was at Fairfield. That was my primary school.
Right.
So that was near the old hospital. And then up to Ballacameen for secondary. So I lived literally around the corner where the old gooseneck used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're at that early age, were you then starting to get involved in sport?
Yeah. So mainly played football, used to do swimming. So used to swim for the island, play football youth level with the island as well. Don't get me wrong, I was no great shakes at either of them, but it was good fun all the same.
I was just going to say, you're not one of those annoying people that are good at every sport then.
I say yes, but everyone will tell you the truth, no.
All right. The fact you're representing the island, you must have been a reasonable level, I guess.
Yeah, reasonable at best, yeah.
Yeah, right. And was that something you just at that age just enjoyed doing, or was it something your folks kind of wanted to keep you off the streets?
Yeah, the hard streets of Douglas.
Yeah.
No, it was something I just love doing. I mean, everyone as a kid, loves going out, mucking around with the mates, putting in a few tackles on them when you get a chance. Swimming was great fun at the time as well. You look back at it and you think, how was swimming 4,000 meters for 2 hours? How was that fun? But it was good crack at the time. So yeah, no, it was all just good.
I'm trying to think back, not knowing your age. Would that have been the NSC or the Aquadrome? Not to put a too older age on you.
Yeah, so good old Summerland and all that.
Yeah.
So 33 meters in a third or something like that, or 33 yards in a third. The pool used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that. I do remember doing some, I'm going to call them swimming meets, but that's not quite the right term when you're
No, that's right.
11.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
throwing in there to do them, yeah, before they knock the place down. So you mentioned about representing the Island. I presume you were playing for a local club as well.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I played for St George's. So played through the youth team. So I'm sure people on the island know Tony Meepin. He's quite a well-known referee back in the day. So he used to run the kids team. So I think it started when I was about 5. Just my dad was a mad Liverpool fan, wanted us to be the next Graham Souness. He definitely got that wrong. Didn't have the hair for it initially. Got the tash though as a kid. And so went down, played with them, then played with Richard Clark, who again is, I suppose, quite well known in football circles. Then my dad, who's called Dave Power, so he used to coach a lot of the youth teams.
Okay.
And then, eventually played up with the first team with Chris Bass. So that was the first year he took charge. And then also played for Old Boys as well, Douglas High School Old Boys, for a sabbatical. So that was the under 16s, and then played with the Combi, and then a little bit with the first team when Kevin Manning, so he was Ireland manager at the time. So when he was manager over there as well.
And I presume all through that phase, it was just ultimately a hobby for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. You'd always have that. Even now, I still think I've got the chance of making it.
What position were you playing?
Left back.
Owl gag.
Not the glamorous one. But yeah, because I was reasonably tall at the time, I used to get put in at centre back, or if I was playing on a really poor team, I might get put as a wing back to be that creative outlet. But definitely a defender by trade.
And then you obviously left the island then to go, I understand, to go to uni and study. So I presume, obviously academic wise, you were fairly, bright to then go. Oh, you're shaking your head.
No.
To then go on. Go off to uni.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, half intelligence. But I originally applied to go to Liverpool John Moores to do football science. So I really wanted to get into coaching. That was what I really wanted to do when I was younger. But I massively failed my A-levels, got E's and D's and that. And then eventually I went through clearing, so when everyone who fails basically have all the crap places that's left. And then my dad was reading through brochures and we remembered a guy coming over from Sunderland Uni to Ballacameen to do a tour. And he seemed really sound. Read the programme, and he had what sounded like a good sports programme. Phoned up the uni and spoke to the main lecturer, a guy called Mark Molyneux. Obviously his name stuck out because of Wolves as well back in the day. And he said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, from the Isle of Man." He goes, "Oh, Jerby." I was like, yeah. He said, "Oh, the air show and all that." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, you're more than welcome to come." Didn't ask me any qualifications. That was basically it.
Jerby seal the deal.
Jerby.
So that's how we got into Sunderland, and then did sports coaching.
And what's that? A 3-year degree, is it?
Yeah, 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And how was uni like? Oh, sorry, go on, Matt.
Yeah, I was just saying there when you mentioned it had interested you since you were younger. Did you use any of that when you were playing, trying coaching and pick up stuff, or did you form a kind of leadership role on the pitch then?
People say I had a big mouth, definitely. But so I was doing my coaching quite young. So I used to help out because I mentioned before, my dad, he used to coach Geordies as well. So I used to help him. And then, eventually started leading sessions. So I think I was about 14. So I just used to love it. So I just used to love the tactical side of the game. Obviously back in the day, it was Football Italia on, Channel 4.
Yeah. So
growing up with that, watching, the Saki teams, the Capellos, Leapy teams, I just got really engrossed in tactics. So reading World Soccer, 442. I used to love reading about the Brazilian leagues and what was going on there. So so I just thought, I knew I was never going to make it as a footballer. So the next best thing could be, if you can't play it, why not coach it? So that was the basic idea.
When we were chatting to Paul Jones on the podcast, he was talking about similar of that tactical aspect, and I was saying to him, and maybe it's the same question, that I think I know sport or football, I can watch it, I think I know the tactics, but I probably actually don't. And then when you see real tactical managers like say Benitez being a Liverpool fan, you see Benitez who's very tactical orientated. I believe Klopp's very that way focused, and maybe we'll get into what you're doing now is very focused around that side of things. So I suppose the question is, I probably don't know anything about tactics, really, do I, as a casual football fan?
It's really interesting. So like, I've worked in football at the top end, you'd call it, for maybe 7 years now. And you go back and just watch a game as a fan, and you're hearing everyone, you still get involved and jump up, but you just hear some stuff and you're like, oh, God.
yeah.
But it's all part of that education, it's really interesting. So I've been very fortunate to, speak and work with a lot of managers across the globe. And you just understand how deeply these guys, love the sport, but just think about it.
Right.
Even just the simplest thing now, with the goal kick rule change, so you can't, you can now have 2 defenders in your penalty area.
Oh, right, okay. So I don't know tactics or anything, clearly. I don't even know that. There's this offside rule people talk? No, go on.
I'll get the salt, pepper, and salt.
Yeah.
But yeah, so even that has just radically changed people's thinking. And like you saw the debates managers were having, they were working on the training ground for weeks just on this one simple rule change. So I think a lot of people know football, they really do. But there's just another level of knowledge. And then there's even another level above that again with the truly elite guys. And
when you watch games, will you see, just as a fan, you'd see movements within I call it the layout, but the formation of the team, you'd see that quite quickly, I assume, that type of thing.
Yeah, you like to think so. Yeah. Once you get into it, you kind of know what changes are going to come, and kind of what order, what they should have done, those type of things. You just start to get an eye for it because you're involved in it a lot.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So uni finishes, what was next on the cards? Did you come back to the island after uni?
No. So again, because I had this driving ambition to become a coach, I kind of felt, so over the summer, there's lots of opportunities to coach in the UK. So I was asked, a lot of people go to America to do colleges to coach and do that, but I kind of actually felt that was almost cheating or it was too easy. I wanted to make it in England. It's just the mindset I had. So I started coaching with Sunderland. So I did work experience as part of my degree. One thing was great, got to work with Sunderland and Newcastle academies and also Sunderland goalkeepers. So he had, unfortunately, he's passed away, a guy called Tim Carter, who was Sunderland's first team coach. But this is when he had likes of Tommy Sorensen, who was just exceptional. So this is when Sunderland were finishing like top 7 in the Premier League, not League One.
Can I just ask there where you said, how come going to America was seen as easy? Is that because of their setup compared to England? Yeah,
it just felt like everyone was doing it. And it's probably snobbishness on my part looking back. And I wish I had gone for the experience. But I kind of felt like if I had to make it in England first, not that I did make it at all really for coaching, but that was just my mindset at the time that, I wanted to prove myself here. And then if it didn't work, then I'd kind of, take that other step or take that other route. Yeah. So
you mentioned there Sunderland. Who was in charge at that time? Around that time when you started there? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, so that was Peter Reid.
He was Reid
when he was there. Yeah.
Okay.
So don't get me wrong, I wasn't really working with Peter Reid at all. I was just this snotty-nosed kid. He was coming in. Just mainly to get a free lunch from the canteen.
and then in that as you learn that role, do you particularly focus, and anyone, do they focus on certain areas? So you might be particularly a goalkeeper coach or a defensive coach, or do you get a broad range of everything?
Yeah, the broad range of everything to start off with. So I was doing my coaching badges as well at the same time. So
they're FA coaching badges, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. So I passed me what's called the level 2. So I think it's level 3 now technically. Which is very much coaching like 6v6, small-sided games. But you touch a little bit on goalkeeping, but it's mainly all about, the game and the game principles. And then I did my UEFA B license, so that's where I stopped in the end. I got that when I was about 22, 23, over in Newcastle's foundation. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, and is that then age groups you're doing that with? Is it doesn't matter?
Yeah, so back in the day, it's changed a lot. So, this was a good 18 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. But initially it was, so like you run like your level 2 was very much like that under 12 principle, and then your UEFA B was that kind of under 16s, U8, and then UEFA A was like, you know, under 23s through to your first team basically, and then you'd have your pro license, which you have to have now if you want to manage in, you know, one of the top leagues.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. Interesting. So the that leadership role of within those, again, I suppose touching on what Matt mentioned earlier, within those sessions and those badges, that's again something just naturally if you find easy enough to do.
Yeah, I think so. Like looking back, it probably actually came from moving to Old Boys back in the day. So again, because I was quite tall, you know, in the reserves, so with the combi, I used to get put at centre back. You know, so I was like 16, playing, you know, with men, and you know, particularly from the back, you have to impose yourself and you have to dominate, and that's all like the managers, the players were just telling me, you've got to speak up. You know, so kind of from being quite quiet, came quite loud, got progressively louder and louder. And that's, you know, led through into like the coaching space as well. Yeah.
So at the time, so over that, well, how long were you at Sunderland for doing the?
So overall, in various roles, so I wasn't always a coach with, you know, with academy or whatever, but so 6 years, 7 years.
All right. Okay.
Like, a lot of it was also working on the community side. So I was actually like going into schools, coaching there. Did some stuff with what were called development centres at the time, which are like the feeders into the academy.
Okay.
But I actually led a program called Family Learning. So interestingly, I love it. I used to love it. It was brilliant. So it was basically working in, you know, quite you know, deprived areas. So Sunderland's quite a deprived city. You know, love it. It's a great city. But there was like quite back in the day, like dropout of adults from education was quite high. So the idea was to use football to re-engage parents to come into school, play football with the kids. But, you know, you'd dress it up as like coaching principles, you know, learn how to be a coach, but a lot was kind of like parenting techniques.
Okay.
But then we then go into stuff doing like about literacy, you know, about numeracy, about, you know, cooking, stuff like that.
Right.
And it was class. So but yeah, I did that for a long time as well.
Yeah.
That sounds that's good. That so judging from that, then when was it UEFA B? Sorry, you got up to there. So it's kind of like how I guess relating it to work is that you're still doing a day-to-day job in that sense, but at the same time studying towards getting your next grade in that sense. So once you hit that UEFA B, you were still doing your coaching role in that sense. You just didn't kind of go towards the A, or for whatever reason didn't, you know, it wasn't just when you were employed to get to that next step in that sense. There's still a broad range of responsibilities and tasks.
Yeah, so for that, in terms of the coaching, I fully funded myself. Well, I say myself, my parents paid for it. You know, that was on me as opposed to work paying for it.
Right.
But at the time, I was also like coaching the university team at Sunderland. So, you know, initially, you know, third team when I used to play as well. Then the university employed me to work with the first team, you know, and try and help them go through the levels as well. Yeah.
And that development work in the community, is that something that Sunderland and all clubs are kind of just do as part of their sort of, you know, social responsibility, for the want of a better expression?
A lot of them did, but Sunderland were like one of the first clubs to really push it. So they had what's called Sunderland Foundation, which is massive in the city. Like it raises millions of pounds and does huge amounts of education. You see a lot of other clubs. So Everton have a phenomenal program. Man City do as well. Like all of them have them now, but like maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was like Sunderland, Everton and Manchester City were just exceptional with what they did. Yeah.
Right, okay. Okay, interesting. So you mentioned when we were chatting earlier that when that role, or you went off to work for the council, Sunderland Council. So what made you you kind of felt you'd run your course at Sunderland?
Yeah, definitely. So again, it was more, you know, because it was more that, you know, community element. I loved what I did, but I kind of took that project so far.
Right.
And for me, I wanted to work, you know, work with more people, work across more sports. and obviously the Olympics were coming to London at the time. So I was like, yeah, this just sounds great. And they had an opportunity to be sports development manager, it was. So that was kind of looking after, performance pathways, school sports, building facilities. So like I went from, knowing how to coach kids and then to like suddenly doing European OSU processes for, building tenders, building swimming pools,
Oh, right, okay.
football facilities.
Big step, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
No, was you saying it? The big step, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Still didn't by the end of it, but it was great.
And was that something was that to do with the bids, sort of logic? My stupid logic thing for you in Sunderland. What's got to do with the Olympic bid in London? Well, I assume there's.
Yeah. So at the time, so Sunderland was offering itself to be like, first of all, there was a huge amount of funding put in to build all these huge facilities. Okay. So. Sunderland was lucky enough to get money to build a 50-metre swimming pool, which are quite rare. So, we had the chance to build this world-class swimming programme, which was really exciting. But they were also looking to like host a number of countries there. So they had like swimmers from Colombia, some places from the Caribbean came over, stuff like that.
Right.
So that was just, the opportunity.
So in that scenario, what they're looking at is when they come over for the Olympics, they stay in outside of London, and and obviously they need facilities wherever they stay, and that's part of that.
Exactly.
As well as then, I guess, building a legacy in Sunderland of having a pool that'll bring the next, swimmer through. I was going to try and name a swimmer then. I should do. We had Lee Holland on a few days ago, but
oh, nice.
PT, yeah, there you go. There's one.
Yeah.
Morehouse, he's an old one, isn't he? So how long was that role with Sunderland Council?
Yeah, so that again, 4 years. Right. Yeah, around about 4 years. So
must have learned a lot in that time, I assume.
Yeah, a huge amount. Again, really fantastic role. You're working with tens of thousands of people. So got to work on like England's World Cup bid as well, which was phenomenal.
What year were they trying to bid for that?
So that was for the 2018 bid.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So still feel a bit bitter about that, not winning it to the Qataris. But that was just a phenomenal experience. So got to like really know. Well, actually, no, it sounds a bit big-headed. Already knew Niall Quinn there, but I got to know Steve Cram.
Okay.
So like we shared a taxi or a car the way down to Manchester. He had like a big do for everyone. And like from that, we ended up getting a marathon in Sunderland. So he was
right.
in Newcastle.
Oh wow! Okay.
Look, come to Sunderland. You're a Sunderland fan, so let's get that set up. So being able to do stuff like that was great. Like.
Yeah. Okay. And that role is that then was you as the development manager, you coordinating. So if there's tenders going in, you're just pulling the right people together to get what you need together to.
Yeah, so a lot of it was writing it myself as well.
Okay, right.
Bids, but also, writing development pathways, going out, assessing what we're doing and coaching quality, working with schools to try and improve standards. So it was a really big task. Yeah.
And that's across a broad range of sports.
Everything.
Oh right. Okay. Wow. Was there a team? I assume there's obviously a team of you doing this.
Oh yeah. I mean, the core team itself was relatively small, so you might have had maybe 10, but senior management down to like your development staff. But obviously, that then goes across to your leisure centres and your coaches and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so that role comes to an end. Why did that end? And
so that came to an end because of the financial crisis.
Okay, so we're 08, 09 time.
Yeah, so I won't get political, but obviously the Tory government came in and huge cuts had to be made. So I think the city had to make £60 million worth of savings in 3 years.
Wow! Right.
At the department, so I had to help save like £2.5 million in a couple of years. So that meant mass redundancies, shutting facilities. It was a real shame, and by then. There was an opportunity to apply for redundancy, and everything just got too political for us. And I was like, no, this isn't right for me. They were offering a very good redundancy, and I knew it would like maintain me and my wife and that for a year. Right. And I just suddenly had this chance. I'd never get it again. I've got 1 year to retrain, completely change my career, change our life. So let's go for it.
Yeah. Okay. And what triggered what? Well, yeah. What started that money ball rolling?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So initially when I was working with the council, I was doing a lot of coaching as well. So like,
yeah, I meant to ask actually, in that role, were you doing much coaching, having sort, or were you moved away from it?
yeah. So it's completely separate from the council. But I was like coaching. So there's a team called Bertley, which is in like the northeast. So trying to think if you know Durham, Chesterley Street areas, it's up around there. So I was coaching with them. So that they were a reasonable standard, and then I was asked to do other coaching with other groups, with youth players. Really young kids.
Volunteer work.
Yeah. But it was interesting because like the amount of kids who then got taken into all the academies in the northeast was massive. So it was actually a real hotbed, because we had a lot of great coaches, but it was the ethos we had was about just letting the kids play. So it wasn't a case of drilling the kids. It was like setting up games with certain challenges and tasks. So you let the task guide the discovery of the players. And then you'd make slight changes, and it was class. Like you had about, I think we had like 120 kids playing every weekend, just on like a couple of massive fields, literally just cones down, off you go. Parents weren't allowed to talk. You just played. If a little kid was brilliant, you put him up against the big kids. You brought the other ones down. Yeah. So a guy called Ian Dipper, who actually employed me initially at Sunderland. So he's a great coach. He works with Sunderland Academy as well. He brought through, do you know the likes of Jill Scott? He plays for England, women's.
Right.
So he was a massive influence in the women's game, produced a lot of England players there as well.
Right, okay.
So I was doing this coaching on the side, working, senior level with men's game and then working with the youth game. And then I just started reading a guy, I don't know if you know, a guy called Michael Cox, writes for The Guardian.
Okay.
He had a blog called Zonal Marking. So that's what he's known as. And he started doing all these like tactical writings, like tactical blogs. They were brilliant. So it was around the time Guardiola, was at Barcelona. And it was just that, probably, if not one of the greatest teams ever. So, reading all that kind of inspired me to, think more about the game, as a whole. And then I started writing simple blogs about coaching, talking about the principles we were applying with the youth teams. Started getting a lot of followers that way on Twitter. Okay. And then, then this Michael Cox, Zonal Marking, mentioned about Moneyball one day in one of his blogs. I was like, we'll give this a read. I was reading everything at the time. And it was about baseball and about how a team called the Oakland A's had like the smallest budget of all the teams. So you're talking like in football terms, you've got Man City or soon to be Newcastle potentially. These guys have got, countries funding them. But right at the bottom, you've got like Burnley. You've got a local guy who's done good. And that's exactly what this Moneyball was. You had like the LA Dodgers and all that. They had a payroll of say 250 million a year. And the Oakland A's had around about 38 million competing in the same league. It's an unfair game. Yeah. So, if you watch that film, interestingly, the company that provided the data is the company I work for now.
Okay.
That's how it started. A guy called Bill James, which again is really cool that you kind of link to that legacy.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is they use data and statistics to kind of, find all these unwanted players because they either look funny or they might have had a bit of a funny arm action or, they had a fat arse, something like that. Yeah. And everyone would ignore them because they just didn't pass the eye test.
Yeah, okay, right.
But they knew statistically these guys had something. So they were able to bring them in on really cheap contracts, keep their budgets really low and basically beat, or compete with all the big boys, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I do want to watch the movie. I kind of want to talk about what happened in the story, but I suppose I shouldn't do a spoiler movie. I haven't only read it on Wikipedia or wherever it was, but.
So how does from going and looking at Moneyball take you on to the next step then?
Yeah. So like reading that, what it just came to me is like, there's this whole world of statistics. And for me, it was about evidence-based coaching. So how do you know what you're doing on the training pitch works? So, we see something, at the weekend, but how do you know you've enabled the best possible learning environment? So, you know, it could be, and like this is some of the research is starting to get into. So there's a really great Portuguese group, and they look at, so this is what I got into, is something called complex dynamic systems theory. So to describe it very simply, you all see like flocks of birds or shoals of fish. That's a dynamic system. And they all have simple rules that govern their behavior. So it looks like it's one organism, but it's not. It's like hundreds, thousands, but they have simple rules that govern what they do. So i.e., if I'm here and you're there, we keep our distance. But if the next one moves, I move, you move. So we all keep this like synchronized distance and movements.
Like social distancing now.
Yeah, yeah, perfect example.
Yeah.
But these guys were looking at stuff about, you know, training practice. So just simple warm-ups. So you'd have like a square and you'd have, you know, player A pass to player B, you know, so you always see this classically, people pass 1-2, then the other two pass. So they measured that to see, well, how similar is this to gameplay? And then they did the same where you had like, you know, passing across each other and then passing all over, and then having what's now known as rondos. So you have a guy, piggy in the middle, guy in the middle, you know, and you pass the ball around them. But they were able to actually evaluate it using data to say, actually, these rondos are the best method to use because they best replicate the actions that the player is going to do in a match.
So were you using this in your coaching going forward then? It kind of had the, not so much a light bulb of a different way of looking at the coaching you were doing and thinking, actually, I can literally apply a different way of thinking, looking at Moneyball and the statistics behind it and saying, right, how do I bring it into what I'm currently doing?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's exactly, you know, what started to do, but I didn't really know what I was doing, you know, as nobody does when they first start. But it's when, so that kind of inspired us to say, right, this is, you know, real analysis. I get this. I'd never done it before, hadn't even really used Excel properly before. So like, you know, just do simple addition. But I thought, I understand this, this feels right. So, so applied to Sunderland University again to do a master's. I got my redundancy. It's like a Craig David song. Got my redundancy on the Thursday. I got me check on the Friday, and then on the Monday afterwards, I signed up for university.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So, going on and doing that course was obviously life changing. But you know, finding out about this dynamic systems. So originally, I was going to do psychology. You know, sports psychology. Thought that was really interesting. But the lecturer was pretty boring, so he put me off it straight away.
Right.
Then just one day I was researching for a lecture, for a piece of coursework, and I found this article, this journal paper called "Analysing Sports Teams as Superorganisms." First of all, I had to make sure I read that right, and then it was talking about this dynamic systems, you know, chaos theory. It's like, bloody hell, what is this?
Right.
And I was like, sod counting the shots. This is where it's at. You know, how do I understand the complex interactions between agents, which is basically, you know, players? That's what it was termed at the time. So just got deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And then this really started to shape. So you got something called ecological psychology as well, which is kind of part of dynamic systems theory, but how it influences your mental processes.
Okay.
Like, simple thing, like, you know, two people walk towards each other, you know, what do you do?
Yeah,
you know,
step out of the way. Yeah,
exactly. You know, unless you're an absolute idiot, you know. But you know, but your behaviour is governed by the environment, and you will have certain ecological. It will have an ecological impact on what you do. So just simple things like you can try it now. So there's something called being in phase and out of phase. And if you try and wiggle your fingers, you can't not get them going like that. So you start off going side to side like a windscreen wiper, but you keep on wiggling them, and then eventually they find this phase where they're like more going in and out. So even with the body, you have these dynamic constraints that govern what you do. So if we can take these principles, design a session, that should speed up learning and then make it more relevant to what you actually do on the pitch, or how you want to condition the player to be able to think about certain situations.
Okay, so that's like it is psychology in there, I guess.
Yeah.
And a way And is it seen then as a way of training people quicker?
Yeah.
Or just training people who just couldn't do it to start with? Or
so it's kind of both. So it's training people quicker, but without instruction is the way to think of it. And it's really mad. So when I was doing stuff, with the academies and that, I was always told, so on the pitch, you're told to speak up, but when you coach, you're told to shut up.
Right.
Because the more you tell the players what to do, the less they know what to do.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Because you're just injecting your information. They're not solving the problem. So obviously, when you see like elite level, yes, there is elements to that, and adults. But particularly when you're developing kids, how can you set the problem for them to solve?
Okay. Yeah, and it's kind of a wiring of the brain then to work on a problem-solving basis rather than an instruction basis, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right, and that's all then based on, how can I put it? What you say before. So an example would be before the game. So if you're then analysing, or you're trying to get them to improve, you go back to the situation where you talk about four people in a square and someone in the middle. That technique then, by people using that technique, it's because it's an in-game situation. It just, I suppose, subconsciously trains the brain quicker.
Yep. Yeah. Right. It becomes a reaction. So it doesn't become a thought process. And this is what you see with the truly great teams and truly great players, and the teams who are good but not up there. And I always go back to that Barcelona team under Guardiola. Liverpool under Klopp. Even though I'm a Red and a bit biased, they are phenomenal. But it's come from repetition, having to solve problem after problem after problem, so that when it comes onto the pitch, it's just automatic. And if you ever go back and watch, the days of Iniesta, Xavi, Messi, and David Villa, the term half touch got introduced because they weren't even fully touching the ball. The ball will come to them and they'll just do a little, just a little waft to the foot, but it just completely changed the dynamics. And the other person already knew where it was, because they're able to recognise situations. They might necessarily have that exact situation coached into them, but because they've been involved in so many and can problem solve so quickly, it just looks instantaneous.
Right. Okay. So at that very elite level you're looking at, obviously everyone's probably pretty much as fit as each other. These are the small edges that makes the difference.
Yeah.
And do you see that when you again watch games and watch football in general? Is that where you see those differences? Where?
Oh yeah, and you see it at every level. Even at five-side down the local, centre, you see the player who's just at that notch above. Because they're thinking two steps ahead of the other players on the pitch.
Right.
The ultimate of it is Messi, basically.
And it's some of that. So obviously you can train people in that. Some people just built in that mindset already better than others.
Yeah. I think Shankly said, what is it, that he didn't make the player, it was his mum and dad. The player's mum and dad who made the player. And, it's genetics. It's quite interesting because I've got twin boys who are both 3 now. And you can see the difference between them. So genetically, they should obviously be, virtually exactly the same. But one is much better at coordination and movement than the other one.
Right, okay.
And he just picks up things so much quicker. So what that's down to, I don't truly know. I haven't treated them differently, but he just picks up things quicker.
Yeah. That's interesting, that, because then, you wonder how that applies if they're, they've got the same genes, if they're twins, that obviously you're never going to follow the exact same path, but you'd think they'd have the same principle, learning techniques and habits, but clearly not.
Yeah. So it's quite interesting. So being a dad now, but having all that, past experience of coaching and, that research that you've kind of got in the back of your head. Yeah. Sometimes it's quite hard to just, parents rather than, step in and, do those type of things as well. Yeah.
Is it a bit like, I suppose, thinking about, if you've got staff as well, again, you tend to deal with staff in different ways. Some need a hug, or some need a kick up the arse. Is that still that same principle? Say you're doing football with the players, and that's kind of outside of that sort of psychological side, or building those.
Yeah. That's the whole man management, of the individual. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Right. So the masters you did, how long did that take you?
So that took 12 months to do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so like during the Masters, went back to Sunderland again, but this time it was doing analysis with the first team and the youth teams. So that was
So you're starting to apply what you're learning here in the environment.
ironically not so much. So I was just a video analyst. So it was a great experience and one I needed for my CV. But maybe because you just again viewed as this guy's just come in. So a lot of people have changed by the time I've gone in there again. But you just kind of viewed as a video analyst, and I don't think people really realise what you could offer.
All right.
It was eventually one conversation I had with the coach who was like the phase lead for the under-16s, and there was a piece of research coming out of Germany about being able to actually capture creativity, to be able to quantify it.
Okay.
Using something called a neural network, which is the type of things I work on now. So neural networks are basically models that look to basically copy the principles of the brain. So you have neurons in the brain, and that they're all bundled together, and that's what fires off your electrical impulses that make up you and me, basically. So that's what these models are based on, is the brain. And they felt that they were able to kind of capture creativity by using these networks, because they could see these different paths from the norm and stuff like that.
When you just to go, when you say capture, what do you mean by capture?
So you can train a model. So this is my day job now, where you train a model to kind of predict something that's going to happen.
Okay.
So it could be the simplest one is, if somebody takes a shot, will somebody score? That's the simplest thing. But the more complex thing is, and I don't know, there's like a drama on at the moment on BBC Two called Devs, which is quite terrifying but interesting. It's kind of what we're trying to do in our job, is basically, given how a player moves, can you predict not just how he moves next, but how everybody else will move as well? Right. So we're trying to basically replicate human decision making over time windows, which sounds a bit terrifying, but is very, very cool. So that's kind of what we're doing on that.
Maybe dig into that in a bit more in a little bit. Just to go back to the analysing side of things, what's involved in that? Or at Sunderland, what was involved with, I presume, watching videos and then going, this is how they play, move, and is it more of an overall kind of team? When this position, they sit 4-4, dead simple, but they'll sit 4-4-2, or but this left back doesn't always tuck in, so there's this space here type of thing.
100%. So that's
job.
what it is. Yeah. I'll have a word. So, and then you would incorporate some statistics into it as well.
Okay. They've conceded X amount goals from corners, types of things.
Exactly.
Near post, whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So I suppose what you do now then, was that, you look back now, was that quite, you look at the back of that now and think that was quite basic stuff?
Oh yeah. I mean,
I'm sure it wasn't at the time and isn't, but as our whole philosophy moves on, and what Pep was doing 5 years ago, nobody was doing 20 years ago, I guess. So natural progression. So I don't mean to undermine what you were doing then. Oh no, look,
it was pretty basic, but football is a basic game. Just made very complex. So people still use a lot of video now, which you should do, because you have to watch it. You have to trust your eyes as well. But the biggest thing for me back then is that you had, you see if you're watching a match and it tells you how far somebody's ran. There was a company called Prozone at the time who was generating that. So they're based in Leeds, where I live now, who I eventually went on to work for. So you had what's called tracking data. And this tracking data would generate like this 2D pitch plot. So you remember like sensible soccer back in the day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you had these dots that moved on the pitch, but it was the actual movements of the players. So you're actually able to capture that. But the only way it was used was to actually measure how far somebody ran.
Okay.
And how hard they'd ran. I just remember reading all this dynamic systems stuff and coaching and that. And I was like, we need to be able to use this to measure tactical behaviour and stuff.
Right.
I was really frustrated about the industry as a whole at the time. So I wrote to Prozone or emailed and said, look, I've got this idea for measuring player attractions, basically. So, if I'm a centre forward, but I never receive the ball, but I make a run, I pull the defender out of position, the ball gets played through for the other striker to score, I will never ever get any credit.
Yeah.
Because the stats only tells you player A has passed to player B and player B's put it in the net.
Yeah.
But actually, this guy's the most important member. So
Yeah,
how do
create the
we
space.
board in?
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So they like the idea. They sent me a load of this tracking data, which I had no idea what I was doing, but I had this concept in my head. So like for the tracking data, you get, it's like GPS. So you get an X and a Y coordinates for every 10th of a second. So you know where everybody is at any moment in time.
And can I ask what format is this data in? Is it?
Yeah, so it's in so like an Excel sheet.
Okay.
So just a massive Excel sheet. There's other versions of it. So the other viewers who might work in like IT or data science, like stored in JSONs or something called Parquet and stuff, which isn't free running. So yeah, there's lots of different ways it's stored. Yeah, so we kind of had these simple things, and then basically I was going through and finding these situations where you might have a 2v1 or 5v4, and just starting to try and come up with a way to measure if a player stands still versus move, what does that actually do? So
did you have like the visual footage of the matches as well? Or
yes.
I was going to say, because I'm just while you're
Yeah,
talking,
likewise. Yeah.
That must be difficult, just looking at sets of data to work out what is going on. Even that must be massive to go through and then work out.
Yeah, so that's actually ironically probably what I do more now. I probably look at more data now than I do look at video.
Right.
Yeah, we always go back to video because you've got to validate it. You might have a model and you go, yeah, this is brilliant, but then you look at a video and go, oh Jesus.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you always have to go back to the video. But yeah, so to give an idea, so there's like 3 million points of data for every game that you get. But that's
a big spreadsheet.
Yeah. So yeah, so anyway, I came up with this concept, using this dynamic systems principles, and kind of discovered you had attractors, repellers, I called them, and then attractors, repellers, and I think I called them slicers or something like that. You tried to come up with these catchy names.
Yeah.
So like an attractor is someone who, if they stand still or wherever they go, people just come towards them.
So man marking type of.
Exactly. You have repellers who basically move and can find space, and then you had like what are termed slicers, and they can just run through, and nobody will ever pick them up.
Right.
Just like Thomas Muller is a great example for Bayern Munich. He's probably the greatest of our current generation to do that.
And is that so? Can you would you label? So in a game, do you end up, or when you've analysed the game, those players will get those, for the want of a better word, those labels.
That's the right term.
And then you'll tend to see that same label through games, because using the example there, that's just what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to try and go too deep into it either, but
I am.
If Muller there is a well-known slicer, why does he not become an attractor then? If everyone knows that when he goes through, you do not leave him, why is he not an attractor?
Because it's he has other players, so he had Robin, he had Ribery, he had Lewandowski. And that's the beauty. So this is the work that I'm doing now. So we can now identify these different roles of players. But what's the optimal combination of these roles?
Going back to Oakland Athletic.
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all clicking together now. Right. Okay. So you mentioned there that year masters, you're doing some work analysing.
Yeah.
And you wrote to the guys, and they sent you all that data. And when you sent it back, I assume that because you mentioned, well, that's where you work now.
Yeah.
I presume that got you on their radar.
So interestingly, it wasn't that, because I hadn't finished it yet by the time they'd offered us a role, which was cool as well. But I'd started blogging and writing about this dynamic systems theory. So they used to put out the top 10 blogs in a month or whatever, and they picked up a couple of mine, which was great. They knew my name that way as well.
Yeah.
They used to do analysis courses. So you went down to Liverpool, John Moore's, and you'd have 2 days there, and they'd show you how to use the software. So all the clubs at the time used it, and it was great. But then you had to do an analysis piece as well at the end, as part of your coursework to be assessed on. And I did a few things. You look back now and it's so simple, but it kind of caught the eye of the tutor.
Right.
And at the end, the guy basically said to us, we do internships. So would you be interested in it? So I was like, 100%, because I was coming to the end of my masters and the end of my money. And at the time I was thinking, how the hell am I going to live? So they offered us this, and I said to him, by the way, I wrote in, about doing this research that I'm still doing. And he was the guy who actually approved it.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I was like, you're that guy. And then, one of those, amazing things that happens. So, so they offered me an internship initially to go down to Leeds. Yeah.
Before we dig into that then, it's quite interesting actually just listening, because at the end of when you're given that redundancy, I could be wrong, but I think most people will be, whether they could find a job, their next instincts to go, I've got a year out, or I've got a year, I need to go and find another job, and be pretty set on looking for another job. But it's quite ballsy, I feel, to go, you know what, I need to go and develop and learn more and use it to enhance myself. And I guess when you're looking at, again, I look at personal PR, we'll call it, with doing the blogs, putting yourself out there, voluntary work, that's all kind of very, very driven work, as an observer, very driven characteristics.
Yeah.
On your part.
Yeah, I suppose so. But like stuff that my parents have drilled into us, if you have a dream, you've got to go for it.
Yeah.
Simple as that. And it sounds really corny, but
well, a good thing, and I hope people listen, listeners, and it's something I certainly pick up just listening to you, that, again, it's easy, just like I say, to go, be made redundant, I need to find another job, but you've gone, right, what do I want to do? I've got a bit of leeway with money here. Some people could have gone, well, I need to stick it in the bank, get a job as quick as possible, and then have that as my fallback. But instead, you've, presumably with the support of your wife, have gone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, massively. Yeah. I mean, she's very well supported now, but but back in the day when saying I failed on me A levels, basically, like the teacher back then, I won't say who he was, but he said to us, he knew I had this passion to be a coach. He said, you'll never be anything in England as a football, which is probably why, looking back at that again, why I didn't want to go to America, because I wanted to kind of prove him wrong. Yeah, basically. So I think little situations like that, obviously, I'd fire, or I'd call to the fire to drive it on, basically.
I do see that sometimes in people where certainly not being, they've had those little, pushes earlier in life, or kicks down, and they've used it as motivation to prove.
Big believer, if you go out and work hard, fortune does favour the brave. And even if it mightn't be so, like getting a job at Prozone, sounds like everything's just worked out. But I'd applied for several, so like there was even a job I applied at another Premier League club, and they were offering like $8,000. So like, $8,000 a year. Like it's technically not even legal. And I didn't even get that job.
Right.
And then it was mad. So like 6 months later, I was consultant to them.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, right.
It was one of those like, they're like, Paul Power. Went, no, I applied. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, thanks, mate.
But again, that was a blessing, because if I had gone to the club, I just would have done video analysis. Right. I would never have gone on this path that I have now to be, being in a very fortunate position.
Again, that's just that drive, isn't it? Like, again, you can get knocks and just kind of go, maybe this isn't for me, or, start doubting yourself. You're sending your CV off and people aren't picking it up. But if you just keep trying, and again, all the motivational stuff I listen to for, I suppose famous people that you hear about, it's, failure or knockbacks, probably the most important thing of that whole process.
Yeah.
To get those opportunities. So you started the internship. Internship, is that the right word?
Yeah.
And was that for a set period of time then initially? Yeah.
So that was going to be for 12 months. Fortunately, they offered me a job in 6. So over the moon with that. But yeah, that was class. So again, I'm very, very lucky. So if I had have come into the industry now, like with what I had back then, I wouldn't get a job. Simple as that. Like with the level of people they're bringing in now. But at the time,
in the sense of when you came into it, it was fairly new. It was an evolving area.
Yeah, nobody really knew what it was. So like the statistician in Moneyball is an economist. So Prozone hired, an economist. It's well, that must be the answer. The guy was great. He's gone on to set up another company with another guy, and he does brilliant stuff. Like now works with people to help buy clubs and stuff like that. So initially they brought myself on. There was another guy called Hector Ruiz. So he's from Spain. Name gives it away a bit, but he has like an engineering background, mathematical, computation, very, very, very smart guy. So it was me, another guy called Omar, who went on to the other company. So we just basically had the chance, because nobody knew what the hell to do with this data. We kind of just got left alone.
Right.
Experimented, built stuff. Yeah.
And with the idea of build it, see if we can, for that word, use it, flog it as a consultancy.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we did. So I was really fortunate. I presented me thesis from my masters at a conference. So again, just with all the network, and there was a guy called Joe Lightfoot who, very thankful to as well. Similar person, like hadn't really been at the highest level in sports, but wanted to be a sporting director. So he basically set up his own stuff to make it happen, and he set up this little conference. Literally, maybe 20 people there, presented me thing. And then there happened to be like the head of performance at Everton was there. Richie Evans. So he's now with Roberto Martinez, at Belgium. So,
okay.
Welsh followed Martinez from Swansea. So he was physio at Swansea when Roberto Martinez played there as well. Followed them all the way through. So he said that this is kind of what's in my mind is what you've put down on paper. We had the chance to do consultation with them.
So at that stage, is that the you talked about the attractors, repellers? Is that the type of thing you present? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So working with him, so we came up with a concept called game intelligence. And what we started to measure was like pressing, but also what was the response to being pressed. Okay. So we started to measure, what was the availability of other players. So, where the passing lanes closed down, did the guy panic? Did other players move for him? Did players move for certain players but not for others?
Oh, interesting.
So you had all that stuff. What happens when you went 1-0 up? Did you stop working? But we didn't measure it on the physical aspect. We measured it on the movements in terms of getting into good spaces, supporting your player, getting back and blocking off options. So we started working on that. And that for it was probably about 2 seasons overall. That was absolutely brilliant experience.
Was that with Everton's data?
Yeah. So yeah. But it was our company who provided it.
And as a Liverpool fan, I assumed you skewed it all around and messed it up before they gave it them.
There's a reason why they finished 5th and not 4th. I'm joking.
No, yeah. That's interesting. So you get a game, the data dump, they give you the video, and then you'd analyse. And I assume then if you're playing Southampton the week after, you'd analyse what they're doing and provide it.
No, it wasn't actually for that. Mine was all about what's called post-match analysis.
Okay.
So, interestingly, post-match analysis about 7-8 years ago wasn't that big a thing. So you do your pre-game and then you go on to the next game. But obviously, if you're going to develop, you have to review what you've done. Again, it's back to those principles about what we're doing on the training pitch. How does it apply to the actual game itself? And it's exactly the same. So you have to review your process. Otherwise, you never really learn.
Okay.
So that's what Everton were really interested in was doing that post-game bit. But what was interesting is that I would never be told what the plan was. I just had to go and look at it.
Yeah. Right.
And they would then compare it. And I would never speak to any of the coaches.
Okay.
It was used as a conversation.
That's some form of bias of you seeing one thinking, trying to skew it and not intentionally skew it to say, you did that.
So obviously, if you speak to Roberto Martinez and he says, "Well, I think this," you go, "Yeah, well, of course, you're right." But that's the whole idea. Keep that separate. Don't let your opinions be biased. And it was brilliant. And we had some phenomenal results with it. You could really see kind of influence that was going on. Absolutely loved it.
I presume then, like you look at and you go and watch it. Maybe use Everton example. A game later on, you looked at. I don't know many Everton players because they're a small team, but would you then see Sigurdsson, for example, and go, well, I've analysed what he does, and then you'd with your eyes at a game, obviously see that he doesn't close space or whatever he might hit those traits, I guess.
Yeah. And then you try to back it up.
Okay.
I mean, this is what I was, you were saying before about God, looking at all that data. But that's kind of what I used to do. So I used to very much ignore the video.
Right.
What does the data tell us? It's completely unbiased. Apart from your own biases in the models, but that's a separate discussion. So what does that tell you first? then review the video. Does it line up? Does it bring up something interesting that you'd never even considered? Rather than just watching it and going, yeah, he did that. Find me the data to back it up.
And did you notice that when you gave the feedback, they did actually change? You start to see amendments in the ways for that person. If we're just using Sigurdsson, how he used to act, and when you be fed back, he did change, or is it more you found it was instinctive and built in their character to still act in that sort of way in those given situations?
Yeah, you definitely saw changes, and don't get me wrong, there is no way I'll be take responsibility for that. Like what I did might add 1%.
Yeah, it's just part of the it's part of the jigsaw.
But you definitely saw certain behaviours start to become the norm.
Yeah,
which are things that you kind of highlight. Yeah,
yeah, and that's got to be great for you as well. As you said, I know you, but even that 1%, that's 1% you've contributed to. What
it's almost starting.
What's changed? Yeah, exactly.
It's changing that habit, isn't it? Because I assume coaches are looking at it and going, "He's constantly doing this. We need to change that," and therefore, then they, obviously, train them to adjust accordingly or adjust that habit. If it's, say it's a bad habit, what they might do might not track back for certain situations.
Yeah. So that was a great experience. Yeah.
Right. And is that still that same principle you're still doing at the moment with the?
Yeah, so it's kind of moved on now. So so we worked with Prozone, and then we got bought out by been there for 3 mergers now. But we got bought by a French company called Amisco. So they were like massive on the subcontinent. And then things kind of stagnated a little bit. But we eventually got bought by this company, Stats. So Stats is the Moneyball company, basically. And so they're based in Chicago. So they were like the biggest, sports data company in America. They did all, baseball, American football and that. And they'd hired a guy called Patrick Lucy. So I'd met Patrick Lucy maybe 2 years before at a conference, and he'd worked with some of our data. So this guy was head of research at Disney, but Disney owned ESPN. Right. So he was brought in really. So his background is in facial recognition and construction, using cameras to automatically detect emotion on the face.
Right.
So like the guy's a genius. He's just a world leader in what he used to do. Oh, sorry, in that, but an even bigger world leader in sports data. And yes, but he loves sports, so he's Australian. So loves cricket, loves football, loves rugby. And he said on the side, if you let me do some sports stuff, I'll do all this other stuff, but just let me do some sports stuff as well. And then so like he helped create automatic camera tracking. So you'd
You still there, Matt?
Yeah, I think
it must be his side. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you went down before when I was.
Oh,
hi, Paul.
You back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Just quiet for a sec there.
I don't miss.
Yeah. So you're saying he designed?
Yeah. So like
trackers.
Yeah, exactly. So it would be automatic broadcast footage basically from cameras, so it would just follow it. But so he started doing research in football, and he created this algorithm to be able to automatically detect formations. So this is one of the hardest things to do in football, and like clubs pay people specifically to watch a game to say what formation is a team in now, and he solved it. Right. By using this tracking data. Absolutely phenomenal.
So the tracking data, is that kind of then obviously it tracks, there's built-in AI that then statistically, I presume based off previous data and what's going on the pitch, will say they're playing whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
In real time.
It can be used in real time as well. Yeah.
Wow.
So, so this was a massive game changer for everything. So he then was brought in as the head of stats to be head of AI, basically. And, he kept myself and Hector on, which was great. And then we just built this team. And it went from, I had an option to go down more like the applied routes, but maybe never ever learning. You just consult and never learn, or go into this AI team and really learn all these new advanced techniques So I was like, that's what I really want to do. You know, I want to keep on learning to be the best I could possibly try to be. Because it didn't feel, because I'd only been doing it for 3 years. So while I was old, you know, I was quite young in the industry. So yeah, that chance to work with him and learn was massive. So that's very much what I do now. It's very much research driven, but all the research now goes into products. So yeah.
So if I can just go back, where you said the teams always want to know, and it was something they couldn't do in terms of spotting a formation live. How is that a problem? Because again, I'm talking from the person who sits on an armchair and watches it, and when you hear the guys in the commentating said, "Oh, they switched to a 4-5-2 or whatever, or whatever it was, 4-4-2, 4-5-1." Just because they made a switch, or someone's yeah, no, that's why I was saying. It shows how much I know. I didn't realise that was such a
important piece of data, I guess.
Big need, or someone was looking at it or whether again because these commentators are just saying, "Oh yeah, they've just switched," or things like that.
So a simple example would be, you know, you said there. So say you had a 3-5-2 versus a 4-4-2. So if I said to you, you've got 3 defenders versus 4 defenders, what would be the biggest difference, do you think, yourself? What would you say if I'm attacking a 3 versus a 4? Where would I try to attack more?
Yeah, try to go down the outside, I assume.
So completely changes the behaviour. But also it then means if they've got 3 and I've got 2 of them can man mark my guys. So I've got nobody free to pass to. So I've then got to adapt. So I might put 3 on. So they're not going to go 3 against 3. So they might have to drop somebody back. You know, so that's why it's just so important to understand what's going on.
Right.
But, like that drives the context of how you analyse what's going on, basically.
And then I presume you bleed in the behaviour, because the behaviour of even if it's 3-on-3, the behaviour of, you know, that centre back, his behaviour is not to be an attractor, is to be a repeller type of thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Right.
All
Okay.
type of principles. Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I was reading through. So this is obviously football we've been talking about. What with the role you're in now? Do you work within other sports, or is that just?
So football is the main one,
Right.
because obviously it's the biggest sport. But we also do stuff in, like, you know, cricket, basketball, rugby. We work in all sports, but in terms of my group's focus, that is mainly cricket, football, rugby, basketball are our main focuses.
So maybe picking up on quickly on a couple of them. If you look at cricket, that might be where, you know, a bowler will typically bowl here, and looking at, again, you on the TV, you see, you know, this is the pitch marks of his various balls. So that's again, they'll be analysing mass amount of data, saying where he typically bowls it to.
So what we've done, so there's a massive sports conference called Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. It's like the biggest one in the world. We had a paper that was like one of the like 8 top papers this year, or technically, yeah, it was this year at it, but for cricket. So you can imagine trying to talk cricket to a bunch of Americans. You know, that was interesting.
See, it's like baseball.
Yeah. But the whole idea is, and this is what, you know, a lot of my research is being focused on, and what our group does is, so if you take a prediction, a lot of the time you're predicting on average, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. That's basically what a prediction is. But the issue is, if I have a different player in that situation, it should completely change the chances. So if you use a football analogy, if I have Jordan Henderson, obviously no disrespect to Hendo, compared to Messi taking a shot, Messi's chance should be higher. Yeah. But current models don't do that. They just tell you, well, on average, you know, you'll score 5 times out of 10, for argument's sake. So this is the work that we do. So we've done it in goalkeepers, done it in strikers, but we did it in cricket. So, you know, given the current situation and the type of ball that the bowler's made, what type of shot do we expect that player to make? So we use like the Ben Stokes super over from the Cricket World Cup as the example, and then showed that where kind of New Zealand went wrong, because you could have used it as like a pre-game tactic, or, you know, you might say, right, what do we want to bowl? We're going to do this. Well, actually, this is the type of field we should set up, because we know he's going to hit it here and here, compared to doing this type of ball. But actually, we'll set it up here. And yeah, that, you know, so that's the type of stuff that we do in cricket as well.
All right. Okay. So very interesting. So the other bits I was then looking on the website was around, well, actually, of interest, that kind of data then, the betting companies, are they interested in that kind of data?
Yeah, so we're working with betting companies as well.
Okay.
So initially it was very much just provide data, but now we're actually helping, create models specifically for that area as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Did I read on the website again? Maybe it was within the business as well. You then maybe have advertisers as well in regard to being able to give them data to perhaps optimize the time they're promoting their products, etc.
Yeah. So it just permeates everything. It's mad. Like there's a huge, really successful one in America. So working, I think it's Xfinity is one of their big TV or internet companies, and it was doing like targeted adverts with football data, and they were finding that it was increasing engagement. People were watching more, willing to spend more. Another one that the guys did was with Budweiser. So it was looking at what was it? I think it was the NFL. I can't remember. I think we did it in multiple sports. But when a certain event happened, everyone's lights in the bars. So that you have lights in the bottom of your pint glass. So whenever, like, say, a touchdown was scored, the lights would go off, and then that would mean it's like happy hour at the bar, or
right,
like that as well. So that was actually with Budweiser Light, hence the light in the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. Wow. So yeah, I mean, you look at anything now, data's, such a massive, any part of life. It's such
I can't remember which CEO said it, but they said basically data's the new oil.
Right. Yeah.
So like Google, Facebook, Amazon, these are the biggest companies in the world. Know more about you than you know about yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's because they have huge data, and that's basically the way the world's gone now.
And just to go back to earlier, you mentioned about analysing data, and then you mentioned about having data bias, even though you hadn't spoke to the coaches. This data bias, again, is that just something built in everyone's psychology, and it's trying to eliminate that risk of your own bias coming in?
Exactly. Yeah, and this is just a really interesting area of research by itself. Like if you leave sport at the moment, so like you see a lot of AI being used, facial tracking and tracking people now, and then predicting how people are going to behave or what their emotions are. But the vast majority, so you have like your training data. So you have to have something to train on for your model to be able to predict what's going to happen next. Now, you'd imagine a lot of this stuff is actually based on, say, if it's facial recognition, it's based on pictures of lots of white people.
Yeah.
Of course, when you look at other ethnicities or whatever, there's suddenly biases there.
Right.
There's a simple thing like a hand dryer. And, they had, I think, a guy put on, a pair of white gloves, and it worked. Took it off. Didn't work.
Oh, right. Okay.
Pigmentation. So that's a massive thing. That's not really, to do with sports, but this is just the whole issue with AI and modeling full stop at the moment is this, bias that's within models.
Right. Okay. Imagine AIs are similar to maybe when you watch Moneyball and start going down this rabbit hole. I imagine AI is probably similar in regard to.
Yeah. I think people get a little bit more scared of it. We definitely haven't made Terminator 2.
No.
There's some very cool stuff out there. Yeah.
And what we do in the Western world compared to, so you talk about facial recognition then, in more policed states like China and things like that, is that the type of thing that technology is, that's what they use down there?
Yeah. So a lot of it as well is used. So a lot of the technology we use is the same stuff for the, automated cars that they have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're using similar technology to that as well, similar modeling techniques.
So you're talking about also Tesla type of autopilot cars? Oh, right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Right, okay. Interesting. Wow, that's another wormhole I could quite happily kill another round. And one other question I just have about your present job, again, I was reading on the website about, I think it was maybe a case study, it was an Italian player, and you guys provide data to him, which goes straight onto his social media channels. I can't think of his name, but I'm not very good at Italian. Bonucci, is it? Something like that?
Bonucci.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not involved in that side too much.
Right. But I presume it's that type of thing where it's all automated, tracks his running, tracks what he does, passes, etc. And then immediately at the end of the game, it just, I suppose, feeds into something that fires out tweets and you know, uses it for his brand awareness, I guess, or whatever the right word is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Probably basic stuff for you lot, but
yeah, it's crazy the stuff that we're doing. So another thing that we're working on right now. So we've done it in basketball initially, but is being able to like detect the skeleton just through video now. So like like say if us three were sat here, you know, we'd be able to detect the face, the shoulders, the hands, the elbows, and that's like the next leap in terms of data that will be available. So at the moment, the advanced thing is knowing where everybody is on the pitch. But what we're going to do, and this is what we used in our goalkeeper work, looking at penalties, is understanding the whole body mechanics and how that moves as well.
Okay. And how do you apply that? How do you see that being applied? So great, I moved this way. How would that apply?
So for me, this is actually the really exciting stuff. I mean, what we do anyway is really cool, but coaches still talk about body shape, you know, body positioning, you know. So if I'm a centre forward and I've got a defender, you know, without us getting up out of the chair, you know, how do I hold my arm? How do I crouch down? Am I receiving with the outside of the foot, the inside of the foot? Are my feet well balanced? All these type of things now, we will in the next couple of years be able to start to analyse as well.
I take it in that instance where I'm just talking about looking at skeletal and drilling it down as close as possible. So even to the way that the goalkeeper may be, when he knows he's going to dive left, he may slightly, you know, subconsciously his body, you know, at the minimal level that you couldn't see at eye level, and that when you get to that skeletal of you can see him, you know, slightly leaning, and you know he's going to do that. Similarly with the footballer, you know, that get into that so you can.
So that was the principle of looking at penalties. So you know, we used that on penalties, and I was really made up in the research paper because I managed to get the line in that hips don't lie. What we were finding is that it's the hips tell you basically where the ball's going to be struck. You know?
Interesting. Okay.
But what you then get is like over exaggerations. So when somebody does an over exaggeration that way, they're basically going to put it in the other corner.
Right. Okay.
It was the same with I can't remember what was the other, like leaning back and stuff like that. So that was all the tells for the goalkeeper to know where the ball was going to go. Yeah.
And those, as they get more, I suppose, finite, those tells, it's just, again, training the keeper to try and pick up on those things in those situations.
And then the beauty should be then that, you know, if that becomes public knowledge, does that then change penalty taking?
Yeah.
So then you have to learn it all again. And it's just you know, continuous cycle.
Yeah.
I also guess it's going to be quite hard because suddenly you've got information overload for a goalkeeper for something that is going to happen in a second or something to try and pick up on about 10 things he's been told while actually remembering to dive the right way.
I presume that's again trying to build that in so it becomes
it's
just
ecological psychology. Being able to make that, recognize the situation and act. Don't look, think, then act. It's too late. But this is like, so one of the best clubs in the world for all this is Ajax. So they have their own like biomechanics lab, some of the world leading data scientists there, and they, you know, they'll get all the guys in, and you see, I think you might have seen, like, if you've seen pictures of Ronaldo getting ready to play FIFA, like they put all these like, you know, bubbles on him, which tracks the whole skeleton. That's kind of what we do now automatically, but they were doing that with their players. So actually with the goalkeepers, and it was looking at the angle that they were striking the ball to get the optimal distance, but not just to get it long, but the speed. So, you know, like a golf shot.
Yeah, right.
They were trying to apply those principles to striking the ball so they could bounce the attack quicker. And like it took like months, I think, for them to get this little bit of information, but it was just distilled so simply to the player. And that's the key thing. I can't show them all these charts and that. It has to be a real small bit of information that they just take on. And then it's all about session design around that bit of information. To
get it into the mindset of, or just so it becomes subconscious.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So generally, just taking up a lot of your time, but as I say, I could probably take up another 2 hours. But just applying those general principles around what you do data-wise, when you apply that, it's totally switching subjects, but an interest of mine in regard to business, and then that psychology of, you know, winning business, doing business, meeting people, networking. Do you see, or is that something that's done now in business?
Yeah. So massively. So business is a big driver, particularly, you know, finance, you know, because, you know, got to make money. So that you know, they're particularly in banking, etc. You know,
so look at like FX traders. I think a lot of that's done around that behavioural kind of.
But behavioural economics and stuff like that. So if you've heard of the book Think Fast, Think Slow, so that Daniel Kahneman. So like they just won the Nobel laureate for like economics last year or 2 years ago. So they read any of their stuff. In fact, the guy who wrote Moneyball has done a book about Daniel Kahneman as well. So that's a great read.
We'll stick him in our footer.
Yeah, definitely worth a read. But like it's just kind of whole AI powered decision making, recommendation. You know, so ironically, some of the biggest developers in this are, you know, so it's Google, but it's like Netflix. Right. So just to be able to recommend to you a video, and I don't particularly think the recommendations are great, but the amount of like AI and research that goes into this is huge.
Yeah, right.
Because obviously there's so much money in one person making one click.
Yeah. So similar, I presume, you're on Facebook and you get these things that you perhaps spoke about earlier. It's picking up the information, sorting out for you, and Yeah.
So like if you took all the brains that's probably trying to analyze advertising data, you could probably solve world poverty. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Amazing. Great. No, well, I don't know whether you have anything more, Matt. Well, I probably do, but I can appreciate I can't keep you all night.
Yeah, let's go quick one. So if you were able to, what sort of area or kind of, I'll just say area because I don't want to get too specific, would you want to look at next in terms of sport? Is there a specific behaviour or pattern or something that you would like to kind of, if you had that data, to delve in and look at next?
Yeah. So like it's actually part of research I'm doing now, which is fortunate, but it's all about, so like the biggest area of risk in football is transfers. You know, are you going to buy Luis Suarez or Jose Altidore? That's the biggest thing. So Suarez went on to be one of their modern great centre forwards. Jose Altidore scored as many goals as Suarez in the Dutch league, but didn't score a single Premier League goal for Sunderland.
Right.
You know, so how do you manage that risk? So this is kind of the stuff we're doing now, is can we simulate, given a player who's played in this team, can we lift them up, move them from a different country, plop them in this team, this manager, you know, with this culture, with these players, and then say, how is this guy playing? How do we expect him to play? But not just that, how will he influence everybody else on his team? And not just that, how will he influence everyone in the other team?
Right.
That's simple,
Yeah. So this is the work that we're doing at the moment, and I just think that's really, really cool.
And is that kind of mapped off historic? So using the example you went there, you'll look at what happened in that situation and all the many factors, and map that out, and obviously another 50, 100 scenarios like that, and try and find these consistent themes, I guess, that either work or don't work in the scenarios.
Basically, yeah. Right. But obviously the biggest issue is that so it's football's very data poor in terms of, like, you know, you think we've only collected data for 10 years, which sounds like a lot, but in 10 years there might have only been 60 people go from Holland to the Premier League, and out of that there's 10 strikers. So how the hell do you actually look at that? Because half of them were good, half of them were crap. So that's the real challenge, about how do you learn that? How do you control for those situations? So that it's a massive problem, but one that's very cool to try and solve.
Okay, interesting. Well, thanks for your time. It's been fascinating to say the least.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm sure there's a lot more. No worries. And the books you mentioned there, for our listeners and people who are watching on YouTube, we'll stick them in the footer. So if you want to look them up, I'm already going to look at Think Fast, Think Slow. No, Think Fast, Think Slow. Yeah,
Yeah.
Look that up. So yeah, thanks for your time. Do you want to check us out, Matt?
Yeah. So wherever you're watching or listening today, please like, subscribe, share, and hit that 5-star review, pretty please. On social media, Facebook, with the M Word Podcast, Twitter, Manx Sports Pod, and on Instagram, we are the M Word IOM.
Cheers, Matt. I hope you sexy people found that good. Thanks for letting us in your ears. It's word out from home.
Word out from Matt.